Guys, the new 5-star banners have been officialized in the 5.1 stream, and in this video I will tell you how pull-worthy each of the featured characters is. Let's go. First phase is featuring Xilonen and Chiori, a lineup with a clear target as they're both Geo characters. I'll start with Xilonen since she's the new character coming out. In the last video I made about her, I kind of already tackled how valuable I think she is, as I called her the most relevant release since Fiorina came out, but in this video I'll go a bit beyond that. I personally believe Xilonen has a top 3 pull value in the game at Constellation 0, with the other two being Fiorina and Kazuha, although you could kind of make an argument for Nahida as well. The reason I say this is because she's one of the most easy plug-and-play supports they've ever released, and on top of that she can provide enough buff for her teammates to be a top meta option on many of the best teams in the game. A lot of people got hung up on comparing her to Kazuha, because just like he does, she can reduce resistance on opponents and provide huge damage bonuses for her teammates, but the conversation shouldn't be quite as easy as if you have Kazuha you shouldn't get Xilonen, or vice versa. First of all, the two of them can be used together on several teams, like Nuvolette compositions for example. Even though multiple resistance reduction effects don't exactly stack well on top of each other, because its effects get halved after the opponent's resistance fall below 0, the combination of the two still results in one of the strongest duo of supports in the game. Second, she just fits on different teams. There are plenty of situations where playing an animo character can be kind of impractical, like when you're playing multiple elements on a team and swording the right one can be hard. This can apply to some tricky vape teams such as Molani's, basically all the metal teams where you use a cryo DPS, and the vape teams with Fiorina too, since Fiorina applies Hydro continuously and makes the Pyro aura very inconsistent to sword during the setup. Xilonen just reduces resistance straight away like Zhongli does, so she doesn't have the same issues. Plus, Kazuha can't affect Geo teammates while Xilonen can, so she's just a massive buff for characters like Navia compared to him. Third, by being able to heal, she also classifies as more of a defensive unit than Kazuha does, of course, and maybe more importantly, she single-handedly enables Fiorina on some teams, like for example Itto teams. While she lacks the grouping and field damage Kazuha has, it can be argued that she has a similar pull value as he does for the different reasons I've listed, if not higher to a degree. As a result, she's one of the few characters that came out in the last year that can be argued as a mass pull. Following her, Chiori, a far less impactful release, or a rare release I should say. Honestly, I believe Chiori is a pretty decent character, but she's definitely a niche one that you should only consider pulling if you're interested in playing a very specific type of teams, them being teams with another Geo character that can create a construct. Granted you can fulfill that condition, she can deal enough damage to be considered a quite strong sub-DPS at Constellation 0 generally, and she can shine on mono Geo teams in particular with the presence of Gore. That said, it should be noted that none of her teams is really a top meta option. The double Geo core of Zhongli and her makes for a nice and comfortable base for most teams, but it's very rarely, if ever, considerable the best option for damage. The mono Geo teams with Itto or her double Geo team with Navia are pretty good overall, especially the second since Navia is a stronger DPS than Itto, but it's worth mentioning that the upcoming Xilonen can probably replace her altogether on both of these teams. The way Xilonen works, she will be only buffing Geo characters on the team if there are at least 2 Pyro, Cryo, Electro or Hydro characters. This means that if you pair her with Itto for example, there will be no space left for Chiori on the team. Of course, for Navia it's a no contest, as Navia can't create constructs, so Chiori deals considerably less damage there, and Xilonen is just much better in that case. Funnily enough, even if you have Chiori's Constellation 1, which removes the requirement of having a construct on field as long as Chiori is a Geo teammate, Xilonen on Constellation 0 is still better for Navia. The only argument in Chiori's favor is that through her Geo application she can help more with Navia's stacks generation, but Xilonen's total impact easily makes up for it. So Chiori is pretty okay I guess, but she's definitely been treated unfairly by Oyoverse in my opinion. If Xilonen could at least create a construct, then it would have been quite different, because in that case the Xilonen-Chiori duo could have been a great core for teams. Admittedly, if you can get Chiori's Constellation 1, the duo looks nice in terms of damage, but it's probably only an expense you want to make if you really like Chiori. Now onto the second phase. It's featuring Nahida and Hu Tao, both characters that are interesting to talk in my opinion. But first let me remind you that if you enjoy my content but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. Starting from Hu Tao, she is definitely one of the main DPS that has aged the best in the whole game. That's because her multipliers are still great nowadays, and she kept getting additions on her teams, starting from Kazuha and Yelan, and ending more recently with Fiorina and now Xilonen. It could be argued that Xiao aged similarly well, thanks to Ferozan first, and then with Furina and Xianyun, but with Hu Tao it's definitely been more of a steady process and she's never felt bad in the meta. That said, there are definitely some things to be mentioned if you plan to pull for her now in 2024, for the first time. She's not exactly the easiest character in the game to play, as her charge attack strings are still some of the most mechanically hard things to execute in Genshin if you want to reach her ceiling output. It's not easy on PC and even less than that on mobile, so you need to be mentally prepared for that. Second, even assuming you can pull those things off consistently, Hu Tao still has inherent flaws that diminish the reward you'll get even if you play her really well. Specifically, on most of her teams, the damage she will dish out will feel extremely single target oriented, which will make her feel slower at completing some abyss rooms than other great DPS, even if her theoretical damage output looks on par with or superior than theirs. The release of Arlecchino really made these Hu Tao flaws noticeable to me, as she's a character that can get similar or better results as hers at equal investment, while basically being a normal attack spam character with better AoE properties. It really essentially highlighted how even though Hu Tao managed to stay on par with the meta in terms of numbers, she's still a character that came out in 2021. And so she lacks many of the quality of life aspects Oyo only introduced on new characters more recently. There are teams that alleviate your AoE issues specifically, like the Xianyun teams mostly, that turn their charge attack combos into charge plus plunge attack combos, with the plunges in particular generating nice AoE damage, but still, I wouldn't say Hu Tao is a great pull nowadays, at least if you look at what other top DPS have to offer. Lastly, Nahida, the Queen of Dendro. Back when she came out, Nahida was seen as a savior of the element, because it only entered the scene a few months prior, and thus Nahida was the first great Dendro player. Nowadays, the situation is still similar in some cases, but the addition of new Dendro units to the meta definitely lowered the reliance on Nahida as a whole, and even in a way highlighted some of her issues. But first, let me just say that Nahida still has the best Dendro application in the game. Her elemental skill is amazing in that sense, as it easily marks every opponent in range and consistently applies Dendro on them for as long as it stays active. On top of that, she has Dendro infused attacks since she's a catalyst, meaning she can pivot on Bloom teams to maximize application. Both of the Hyper Bloom teams with a double Hydro core backing her up and the Nilu Bloom teams are very good options in the meta to this day, and mainly thanks to Nahida. That said, she has one issue in particular, namely that if the opponents die, her elemental skill stops working, since it only keeps dealing damage to the opponents she has marked. At a glance, this is not a big deal, and it's only a huge problem for characters that have issues of their own, like a Cyno with his long-ass field time, but it's also a flaw that started looking worse with time. The more recently released Archon, Furina, summons pets with her elemental skill that just follow the active character for the same duration as Nahida's skill. As such, it's more consistent because it's not tied to specific opponents staying alive. Even when it comes to Dendro, Oyoverse improved on that aspect, with both Baiju and Emily being able to have more consistent Dendro application in multi-wave scenarios. However, this is not the only one of Nahida's issues to me. Another gripe I currently have with her is that her buffing capabilities at Constellation 0 are not that great compared to somebody like Furina. Nahida can give the active character on the team a big elemental mastery buff through her elemental burst, and that's about it. This is great for elemental mastery scalers like Cyno and Alhaitham, but it already starts being less exceptional even in the Dendro niche if you start looking at on-fielders like Clorant, which don't have elemental mastery scaling. As a result, options such as Baiju and Kirara became quite prominent on Quicken teams with an Electro carry specifically. The situation changes if you have Nahida's Constellation 2 here, because it does add a lot of damage, but some people may see this as an unfair comparison. More recently, with the release of Emily and Kenage, Hoyoverse diverged from Nahida completely, even though they're both Dendro characters, because they are both attack scalers that want to be used on burning teams mainly, a composition where Nahida just doesn't fit very well. Since her buffing capabilities are useless here, her application is really not needed, and she needs Quicken applied on opponents to deal decent damage to begin with. So, in my opinion, Nahida only really remained a must for Bloom teams, while she ranges from great to not that good on other Dendro teams in my opinion. As a whole, she's definitely not a catalyst of the entire element anymore. To end the video, if I had to rank the characters in this patch in terms of pull value, I would place Xilonen first, Nahida second, then Hu Tao third, and Chiori last. Some might be surprised by Nahida not being first, but I just see Xilonen as the more impactful, more versatile character moving forward in the meta. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and also go check the Xilonen guide I made a few days ago. Bye bye.